So, you might recognize Jorge Andrés Ballesteros, who we then invited to write a much expanded version of it, which is more like a 30-40-minute piece, which is why it's in the second half. And for those of you who might be familiar with the good old favorite Peter and the Wolf, you might find this a little familiar. However, here to tell us more about it is the composer himself. Please welcome Jorge Andrés Ballesteros.
Good evening, everyone. It is so good to be back here in Holyoke. I had a really wonderful time with the Victory Players in Tian last time. As Tian mentioned, eating a lot of great food. And
despite COVID, I might add.
One day I will write a piece about that, because that's a whole story in and of itself. But today's story is a little bit different. How many of you know Zeus and Athena and all Hercules, all these Greek gods? We know them? Okay. Who knows Thor and Odin and kind of these Norse gods? Okay, I see a few hands. Who knows Quetzalcoatl, Huitzilopochtli, Tlaloc? I see a few hands. Okay, great. So these are some of the Mesoamerican gods. So Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent you see in all kinds of iconography in the Aztecs with the Mayans, all over Mesoamerica. Huitzilopochtli is a sun god, a little more unique to the Aztecs. And there's all these really fascinating myths there, and I wanted to set one of those to music. So the piece that Tian was referring to last time included one of these myths, the myth of the moon goddess, and then kind of spiraled into the present. Tonight we're just going to stay in this mythical mode the whole way through. It is the myth of 5 sons. It tells the story of 5 different sons. I'm not going to give you more than that, because I get to explain a little bit more. The musicians will explain a little bit more what you're going to experience. It does have kind of that connection to Peter and the Wolf, kind of that musical storytelling with a narrator. And I'm so excited that you invited me back to do this, and really looking forward to this.
And I would say this is also one of those success stories, because coming out of that commission, and I was just talking to folks in the audience that the work that we do here together as a community sometimes has resonances far beyond just the small community that we are here. Small but mighty. And in this case, this ended up winning, I believe, a grant from the Boston Community Foundation.
Yes, ultimately this piece was supported by the Boston Foundation. Like you said, it resonated with them. We got a grant to support the creation of this piece. I have been really excitedly sharing about this piece with my family in Mexico, as well as other musicians in Mexico, and hearing a lot of excitement around this piece, which you get to experience for the very first time tonight.
As a kid, I was obsessed with myths. It was just so exciting. I'm originally from Singapore, founded in 1965. So we didn't have a lot of myths, as you can imagine. That was the myths going back to 1963, which was censored, by the way. So not terribly helpful that way. But so this has always been fascinating. But Andres, would you share with us a little bit about why do these myths mean so much to you, and why are you choosing to talk about them to tell the story?
Yes, so myths, and particularly Aztec myths and iconography, occupy a really interesting place in Mexico. I think the Aztecs are very strongly associated with Mexico, and the reality is that the indigenous population of Mexico, the pre-Hispanic population of Mexico, was extremely diverse. There were a lot of different kingdoms and empires and religions and mythologies and languages and so on and so forth. So like, for example, my grandfather I know was Purepecha, even though none of that culture was passed down. That is a civilization that was never taken over by the Aztecs. The Aztecs were also actually pretty short-lived. They just happened to be there when Hernan Cortez showed up, but the Aztec Empire lasted barely a century. And Mesoamerican history goes back thousands of years before that. But this Aztec iconography, the story of Tenochtitlan, which was the predecessor to Mexico City, the calendar, the 5 suns, all of these symbols were used particularly like after the creation of the country of Mexico, but especially in the early 1900s after the Mexican Revolution, this idea of creating a Mexican national identity used these symbols regardless of the linguistic or cultural origin of any particular person, because there was this mix of cultures, this mestizaje, that created a new culture, and Five Sons is part of that kind of forging of a national identity.
Thank you. So please join me in welcoming the composer himself as the narrator. Here is a performance of Jorge Andrés Ballesteros' Five Sons.
You are about to hear a retelling of an ancient Aztec myth, the myth of Five Sons. We will hear this story through the eyes of two of the most important gods. Wise Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is the god of wind. We hear him floating on the woodwinds, the piccolo and the clarinet. Meanwhile, tricky Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, god of night and chaos, we hear him jumping unpredictably on the violin, cello, and piano. The last member of our ensemble creates a special atmosphere with many different percussion instruments, including a log drum called a teponaztli, a group of drums, cymbals and marimba, and many other special sounds. Like many Aztec myths, our story is told not in a straight line, but in cycles of creation and destruction. At the beginning of each cycle, we hear the gods gather to create a new world. Then, one of their number takes a mighty leap into the sky to become the sun. For a time, all is well in the world. But then, inevitably, something goes wrong. God becomes furious. And the world is destroyed. Before the cycle begins again. Long ago, before time itself existed, there was only chaos. Of the chaos arose a God who contained every duality. Male and female, fire and water, air and earth, life and death, and everything in between. This was Ometeotl, God of duality, for Ome means two, and Teotl means God. Ometeotl created 4 children, giving each a direction to rule. The firstborn was wise Quetzalcoatl, God of wind, the feathered serpent, ruler of the West. His brother and rival was Tricky Tezcatlipoca, God of night and chaos, ruler of the north. Huitzilopochtli ruled the south, while Xipetotec ruled the east. And so, these 4 gods decided to build a new world. the four gods processed to the center of the world. They said, "Let one of us become the sun, so that light may shine over the land." Suddenly, Tezcatlipoca, god of chaos, took a mighty leap into the sky and became the first sun. Now, wise Quetzalcoatl was very unhappy. But he put his enmity aside, and together, under the light of the first sun, the gods created a world of giants. Tezcatlipoca, however, was not a very good sun. He could only shine dimly, creating a never-ending dusk. And after 13 cycles of 52 years of near darkness, wise Quetzalcoatl had enough. He knocked Tezcatlipoca right out of the sky. Tricky Tezcatlipoca was furious. So he rained down jaguars on the earth. The jaguars ate most of the giants, and those who survived fell and became the mountains we see today. last giant fell, the jaguars left. The world ended, and so too did the time of the first sun. And the gods set about cleaning up the destruction. The mountain over there, giant fallen, there's maybe a little jaguar bite taken out of it. I still see ones on the loose. The gods looked at the world they had destroyed. And they decided to try again. Wise Quetzalcoatl, god of wind, the feathered serpent, took a mighty leap into the sky. And became the second sun. Together, under the light of the second sun, the gods created normal-sized humans. At first, it was a time of peace, a golden age. The gods flourished and multiplied. But eventually, Tricky Tezcatlipoca became jealous. And after 13 cycles of 52 years, he climbed the heavens and knocked Quetzalcoatl right out of the sky. Quetzalcoatl was furious. So he sent wild hurricanes to wipe the face of the earth. Most of the humans were blown away, but some grew fur and strong arms to hold on, becoming the monkeys we see today. Once the last humans were gone, the hurricanes faded, and the gods set about cleaning up the destruction. And so, the time of the second sun ended. Shocked at their failure, the gods gathered at the center of the world. They decided to try again. One of the new gods, mighty Tlaloc, god of rain and storms, took a mighty leap into the sky and became the third sun. Together, under the light of the third sun, the gods created new humans out of mud. Under mighty Tlaloc's fertile rains, the land and people flourished. But soon, Tezcatlipoca became jealous. And after 13 cycles of 52 years, he stole Tlaloc's most valuable possession. In his grief, mighty Tlaloc stopped sending rain, and the world dried up. Please, the people begged, send us rain. You want rain? Tlaloc roared, and he sent a rain of fire to destroy the world. Some humans grew wings and flew above the burning ground, becoming the birds we see today. And once the last humans were gone and the fires went out, the gods set about cleaning up the destruction. And so the time of the third sun ended. Angered at Tezcatlipoca, the gods gathered again at the center of the world. And they decided to try again. Kain Chalchutlicue, the goddess of water and rivers, took a mighty leap into the sky. And became the fourth sun. Together, under the light of the fourth sun, the gods made new humans out of corn. Under kind Chalchutlicue's careful care, the land and people flourished. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, shared his wisdom with the goddess of the rivers. But eventually, tricky Tezcatlipoca sowed chaos. Corrupted kind Chalchutlicue until she could no longer even stand to look at the humans. And after 13 cycles of 52 years, kind Chalchutlicue sent a flood of blood to drown the world. Some humans grew fins and learned to swim, becoming the fish we see today. Once the last humans were gone, the floods receded, and the gods set about cleaning up the destruction. And so, the time of the fourth sun ended. The gods gathered at the center of the world once more, chastened by their failure. They wondered whether they should try again. One fire still burned, a sacred fire. Whoever jumped into it would become the new sun. But none of the gods wished to sacrifice themselves by taking a mighty leap into the pyre. For even the gods were afraid. But then, the ancient sickly Nanawatsin stepped forward. Wise Quetzalcoatl and tricky Tezcatlipoca were amazed. The gods watched as Nanawatsin took a gentle leap into the fire. And took one last ragged breath. The ancient god burned to ashes. And rose as Tonatiuh, the fifth sun. This is our age, under the light of the fifth sun. But we do not know how long the gods will be pleased, how long they will be at peace. And one day, perhaps, the world
will be destroyed again.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed all of that brand new music, and I feel maybe the birth of a new masterpiece with that last piece. Bravo, bravo to all the composers, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next year.